to create a strong bond. Welding involves melting the base materials at a joint, and you often add filler material, which enhances the strength of the connection of both materials. Welders can build and repair things made out of metal when you weld. Welders work on everything, like from bridges, buildings, to automotive, pipelines, farm equipment, and even spacecrafts. Next slide. Okay, so there are 3 different types of welding. The first one is stick, and then MIG, and then TIG. The 3 different types, they all are used for different jobs. And MIG is the most common used now, which that's mostly what they use in like shops, and it's just faster and takes less time. It takes less time. And then TIG is used for like precise work, like aluminum, and then stick is more like good for construction and outdoor use. Next slide. Okay, so the first one is stick welding, which is also called SMA, which SMA is it stands for shielded metal arc welding. Stick is a process that involves using an electric current to create an arc melt between a coated electrode and the workpiece. The heat generated by the arc melts both the electrode and the base metal, and then which allows them to fuse together as they cool. And then, like I said, the example of welding would be like a gate. And then I have, which the electrode would be this, which you would hook the electrode holder, and you'd put this in between that, and then heat it up, and then you could weld with it. Next slide. Okay. The next one is MIG welding, which is also known as metal insert gas welding. This welding technique that creates electric arc between a consumable wire electrode and the workpiece, and an electric arc is generated between the wire and the wire electrode and the metal workpiece, and introducing intense heat that melts both the wire and the metal, or the base metal, at the joint. And an example of what MIG would be used on would be the metal structures at the water park. Okay, the next one is TIG welding, which is also known as tungsten insert gas welding. TIG is an arc welding process that utilizes a non-consumable tungsten electrode to create an electric arc between the electrode and the workpiece. So this one, unlike the last two, you don't have to keep, like with the stick, you would have to keep changing the electrode, and the MIG would just be pushing wire through this, and it comes out there, and this is just a metal rod that you tungsten that you grind at the tip to like a 20%, 20 degree, so it makes like a fine point, and then shave like the top off, so it just gets one point instead of spreading all over. And this process also requires a shielded gas like argon, or a mixture of argon and helium. It protects the weld and keeps it from the contamination in the air, and the contamination weakens the weld. And like examples of TIG welding would be they're mostly used for welding stainless steel pipes and aluminum, and then also food grade items because it's a cleaner weld. Okay. Next is a history of welding. The first ever welding technique that was created is forge welding. It is an ancient technique used by blacksmiths and dated back to the Bronze Age. This was the only method until the early 1900s, when arc and gas welding were created. Stick welding was created in the 1800s. It is primarily used for heavy equipment and structures, and like I said, it's mainly used for outdoors because it's one that don't have to use gas, so the gas don't get pushed away by like the wind, or so it's better outside. Okay. MIG welding started in 1948 by the Hobart brothers. During World War II, there was a demand for efficient welding techniques for military equipment, and MIG welding was normally used on steel. TIG welding started in 1942 by Russell Meredith. It was an enormous success and gave American industries the ability to build ships, aircrafts, and other products faster than ever before in human history. TIG welding was mainly used on various materials. Okay, now the safety. This is an important part for welding because, there's a lot of things. Welding isn't just about the sparks. It takes focus, planning, and attention to detail. Safety is very important. It is an important part, or it is important to have the safety equipment when you are welding, or we're going to weld. So the first thing you want to have is a welding helmet. And what the welding helmet does is it protects your neck, your face, and your eyes from the UV light. Because when you weld, that's what the light, it gives off UV light. So that's going to protect you from getting a sunburn on your skin and making you go blind. And then the next thing you're going to want is a welding jacket, because there are sparks. Especially for MIG, there are sparks going everywhere. So this helps you protect your arms and keeps you from getting sunburned. Because it's not fun. And so and then the next thing are welding gloves. You're gonna want these because when you start welding, the metal gets really hot. I mean, because you're heating up the metal to where it to a melting point, and these help you from the heat, and then also helps your hands from like the sparks or the UV light. And then you also want to be wearing like pants, and for like the shirt, if you're just wearing a shirt, cotton shirt, because the cotton doesn't catch on fire. And then also, well, this is the gas hookup that you'd hook from the tank, the gas tank, to the welder, and that could be used as a safety equipment too, because without that, it would just the argon would just be coming out of the tank and just be going in the air, and it's not good for you to breathe that in. And then I'll be telling you guys about like my experience, because I wasn't able to put this in the slides. And then here's a video. So that's uphill welding is what that is. And which is kind of hard to do. And then that's MIG welding. And then this is going to be TIG. And then those are the pictures of me welding. Okay. So what I made for my senior project was I made the horseshoe flower mason jar flower vase, and then also a horseshoe cross. And for both of these, well, for the flower vase, it took me probably like an hour and 30 minutes to do, because I had to find the right length of horseshoes, and also the top one, since it's rounded, I heated up with a torch and hammered it till it got to the size that I needed. And then for the cross, I had to weld all the horseshoes together, which took me about 30 minutes, and I made 2 of them. Okay, and then I'm going back. So why I chose welding is because I enjoy working with my hands. I also like creating things and building things. It is a career I have wanted to do for a while. So when the opportunity came up, I took it. My plan is when I graduate is to go to CWI, which I got accepted to, and I'm just on the wait list. And choosing welding as my senior project, I am taking away that I really do enjoy the process of learning how to weld, and it is something that I look forward to every time I got to go learn from my mentor. And welding takes a lot of patience. Like, it's not just a quick process, and there's a lot of things more to it. I've also learned that I'm a quick learner, and when it comes to something that I'm interested in. This project helped me confirm that welding is the right career path for me and I am excited to continue learning and growing from this trade. Now, could I get Mrs. B to come up here? I would like to donate this or give this to Calvary as part of my senior project.
Thank you, Logan. Give him a hand.
Do you judges have any questions? Oh, yeah. Okay.
No microphone? Okay. So I have a couple questions, but I'll just ask one for now. So I've done a little bit of welding before, but I know there's a difference between, I guess, being a welder that shows up every day and just gets on a machine and just welds and welds and welds and welds. You know, you're building a building or whatever. But then there's also the welder that he is working in a machine shop, and they're like giving you a set of plans perhaps, or they're saying, hey, this is what I need to have built, build it for me, and which is also what welding does. So what kind of aspect are you most interested in getting involved with?
Probably going out and fixing things, like kind of like what Bill's Machine Shop does. They do I guess they do both. So kind of both. Just if there's an opportunity, I'm gonna take it. Whatever, if it's in welding. I mean, yeah.
Did you have any experience welding before this project?
Yeah, I did welding at Perta, and I did it the year before, and then I was doing welding while I was doing my senior project, so it helped a lot.
So the jacket that you have to wear, I noticed in one of the pictures that you did not have it on. Do you have to have one on all the time?
You should have one on. I did. To my offense, I did not have a welding jacket at that time.
Gotcha.
So, and my uncle told me it'd be fine because he's a welder. So he does that every day, and he's used to it, or say his skin's used to it.
And did you come away with burns on that day?
Sunburn, yes. A bad sunburn.
Gotcha.
Really bad.
That's
And
it.
I only welded for probably an hour and 30 minutes, so yeah.
Okay. Cool. And she's good.
Okay.
One more. So I know that in years past, obviously welding's come a long ways. How do you keep from getting sick, breathing in all the fumes nowadays versus in years past? What's different now than what it was, say, 40 years ago?
There's more safety to it. They check the welders a lot more than they did. And there's better equipment, like connections to stuff so that stuff doesn't go out. And even if it did, you're supposed, most buildings, if you're welding, you're supposed to have a ventilation system so it takes it out. So that's also another thing because they didn't used to have that. So
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're done. I don't know what the next step is, but I think we're done with
Thank you.
questions.
This here.
I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Okay, judges, how was it? That was really close to my face. Sorry. Didn't mean to blast your eardrums. Okay, are we ready? Yes, we are definitely ready. Okay. Without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to call up Miss Alessandra Nunez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alessandra Nunez. Did you know that when entering the foster care system, children often arrive with only the clothes on their backs and a trash bag with only a few things in it? This fact is something that motivated me to do my project to help Thousand Hills Foster Care Foundation. If you don't know what Thousand Hills is, they are a nonprofit organization that helps foster kids by creating backpacks containing essential items which are given to them as they enter their foster homes. They also help to provide resources and support for foster children and their families. In the past, I have had friends who were in foster care and known people who were foster parents. I always knew that there was a lot to it, but the side of foster care that I had seen before was from the perspective of the foster parents. When I was younger, I remember friends of my parents who were going through the process of fostering to adopt. They took in multiple young children, but every time that they wanted to adopt one, it wouldn't work out. Finally, after years of waiting, they were able to adopt the little boy that they were trying to. They were so happy. But even though this was an incredible thing that happened, it got me thinking, what about the kids who don't get adopted? The ones who spend their whole lives moving from one house to the next. I guess I never really dwelt on the truth or facts of what these kids really go through. But throughout the course of this project, I have been more aware of what they do go through and how great their needs are. When I met with my mentor, Ruby Cup, she informed me about all the needs of these children when they enter their foster homes. Oftentimes, they lack basic hygiene supplies, and their foster parents can't always provide these things right away. When I heard all of the things that these kids don't have, it hurt my heart, and I knew that I wanted to do something to help them, even in a small way. This is where the idea of having a donation drive for these items came from. We started by making a list of things to collect. Then I selected the dates of the drive. First slide, please. Then I selected, it was going to last for 2 weeks. Then I selected 5 locations to put donation boxes at. These 5 were the Emmett Police Department, Emmett Library, Thousand Hills, Calvary Chapel Academy's elementary campus, and Calvary Chapel Emmett. Then I looked up statistics that connected foster care in some way to each of the locations that I had selected. Next slide, please. For instance, did you know that when a child is taken out of their home, they have to wait in the police station for anywhere from 4 to 72 hours for a social worker to come and get them? For Emmett Library, there are 3,900 children in foster care in the U.S., and about 50% of these children have little to no access to books. For my box at Thousand Hills, since July of 2025, Thousand Hills has given about 181 backpacks to kids from Twin Falls all the way to Bend, Oregon. For my box at the elementary campus, elementary-age children in foster care face significant educational disruptions due to frequent school changes and placement instability. And lastly, for Calvary Chapel Emmett. As I researched this one, I was actually surprised to find out that the majority of foster parents are actually Christians or claim to be of some other religious affiliation. Next, I reached out to the Chief of Police, Steve Kunka. I submitted a formal request to put a donation box outside of the police station, which he forwarded to the city clerk to give his approval. I also went to each location in person, explained my project, and received permission from each of the businesses to put my box out there. Next, I went to grocery stores in town and asked for any boxes that they might have for me to take. I ended up with several, and decorating them was surprisingly way more time-consuming than I had expected. After completing this task, I created a post and a flyer that I would put on multiple Facebook groups throughout Emmett and Gem County. Other ways that I advertised my project were by coming to Calvary Emmett one Sunday and making an announcement. And our school principal, Mrs. Barclay, also included a description of my project and a flyer in her weekly emails to parents. I made a post the night before the drive started, and the next morning I went and put out my boxes. I checked on them throughout the first week and started to see donations coming in. I remember when I saw my first donation in my box at the police station, I was so happy to see that people were actually giving and supporting this drive. By the end of the first week, I already had a pretty good amount of donations. And so that night, I made another post reminding everyone that there was 1 week left. On the final day of the drive, I collected all of the boxes. Some locations, like the police station and Calvary's elementary campus, had so many donations that they overflowed into extra boxes and bags. At the police station, I had my box plus a huge extra one to take as well, and I could hardly carry it. And that actually made me very happy because it meant that it was full to the top. Outside of my donation boxes, I also had several personal donations that were given to me by family members who lived in other states, as well as friends of my parents who wanted to help support me. A couple of days later, I transported the boxes from my house to Thousand Hills. There, we unpacked all of the hygiene products, displayed them, and began to calculate how much we had. Next slide, please. We counted how many of each item we had, and items that weren't even on my list were donated as well, which was amazing. And when we had finished counting, the grand total of donations amounted to 444. Next slide, please. When I first started this project, the end result seemed so far away, and I was concerned that I wouldn't receive any donations. Some valuable lessons that I have learned are writing out the steps that you need to do in order to complete a project like this and following all of them. Before I did this, I was completely overwhelmed of all of the steps that seemed necessary in order to bring this project to life. I also learned that I am capable of making a big impact. These donations will bless at least 125 kids as they enter their new foster homes. I also realized that you can never ask too many questions. I learned the importance of doing my own research and not being afraid to dig deep for information. Even in writing this speech, I was made more aware of the fact that there are so many generous people in the world. People who donated their time, money, and resources in order to make this project a huge success. I'm so happy that I was able to do this for Thousand Hills, and seeing everything that was given to support them and my project was a huge blessing. In the Bible, God tells us multiple times to take care of the orphans, and this project has helped to care for these kids who have no family and no one who's able to care for them in a real and effective way. I feel that it is crucial that these kids are made aware of the fact that they are cared for, thought of, and loved. And even though this project may not fix the hardship that foster children go through, my hope is that they will feel cared for, thought of, and loved through receiving a backpack from Thousand Hills with things to wash themselves after a hard day and a pair of fresh, clean clothes to sleep in. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 42, it says, "If anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will surely not lose their reward." Even in a way as small as giving some hygiene products to these kids, I feel that it could be part of a gift that could help to give them some source of comfort and hope. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to give a personal thank you to Carol Cox for introducing me to Thousand Hills, to my mentor, Becky Cupp, and her mom, Ruby, for all the help that they have given me, to Miss Sheldon for answering my countless questions, And also thank you to my mom and dad, Vanessa and Anthony, for being with me every step of the way. In Matthew 9, verse 7, it says that God loves a cheerful giver. And there were so many people who gladly gave to support this project. And I appreciate everyone who contributed in any way. Thank you all for coming tonight and listening to my presentation. Judges, any questions?
How do you see this project impacting the rest of your life?
Well, I've always had like a heart for kids and like babies, and I want to be a neonatal nurse when I graduate, so that would be caring for kids still. So I don't know. I guess it just gave me more of a basis of more of a realization of what other kids that don't have families go through, and yeah, we're aware of that.
So, what was your favorite part of this project?
That's a good question. I think that my favorite part was when we were taking all of the stuff out of the boxes, because like there was just more and more and more that kept coming out of each box, and I was like, wow, how did all this fit in here? And it was just so cool to see how much was given. It was awesome.
Okay, I have one last question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I know that Thousand Hills wasn't the main focus of your project. That's who you were kind of running your senior project through, I guess. But do you want to give a plug to those guys at Thousand Hills and tell them kind of what they do and how awesome they are?
You mean say what they do, or
Yes, and how awesome they are.
they're pretty awesome. They do a lot. Well, Thousand Hills, like as I said before, they create backpacks that contain like hygiene supplies and clothes and books and stuffed animals for the littler kids, and they give them to the kids as they enter their foster homes so that they have something of their own to hold on to, because they really don't have anything when they enter their house, their new foster homes. So just something that they can call their own.
Just a comment or a statement maybe. So just from my experience of working with the police department, and your dad can attest to this, but when Thousand Hills became a part of that, just so that the rest of the public, general public is known, the law enforcement community loved Thousand Hills, and the impact that it helps make on those kids is awesome. So thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Is that it? Okay.
Number 2, all done. Allie did an amazing job, by the way. I was really impressed with hers as well. Now, if we are all ready, I see one of you. You're very ready. Yes, you. Josiah. Yep, he's ready. Okay, we are going to move on to our third presenter of the night. I am very excited about this one because I am a history buff, and it just speaks to my heart. So please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Gavin Willis.
Hello, everyone. Of course, as you just said my name is Gavin Willis. Been a student here for 14 years now at this point, if you can believe it. One of the last original students. So, my senior project was a life history event at our local museum here in Emmett. Can you just turn the next slide, please? Oh, you cannot read those very well, but if you could, those are all the names of Civil War veterans that at one point or another lived in or around our town here. Most of these names, they've been forgotten or, they're not, and whatnot, but 13 of these men are buried here at our local cemetery. You can turn to the next slide if you want to. So, a life history event, ignore the cat on the bottom. Now, a life history event at the museum basically is I, along with other volunteers at our local museum, would get in uniform, because that's the proper term. We're not in costumes, we're in uniform. My mentor, Meg Davis, she was very sternly corrected by a Civil War reenactment group one time when she was calling them costumes. You get in uniform, and for mine, I specifically got a group of middle schoolers, and we present ourselves in the dress of the time of different eras and different groups that lived here in our town throughout its history, seeing how we're actually a somewhat old town for this area of Idaho. We're founded in 1868. And, of course, I'm in the garb of a Union soldier because a lot of the first people that lived here in Idaho in general and in our town were veterans of the Civil War. And what I did for this group of middle schoolers is basically I was mainly more explaining on the military heritage of our town. Like, I know it doesn't specifically relate to Civil War, but one of the men that lived in our town was a Flying Tiger, which, if you don't know, was a volunteer regiment of pilots that were sent to China to help fend off Japanese Air Force. It's not exactly related to my project, but I just thought I'd put that out there. So that was basically the community service aspect of my project. A lot of what took me so long to do that was waiting to get in contact with a middle school homeschool group. It took me about 3 weeks to get into contact and get the thing scheduled because, they have to take it in front of a board. So I emailed them. They said, we really like your idea, and we'll bring it up to our next board meeting. And then I'm just kind of sitting there for like 3 weeks waiting for a response back because they only meet like once a month, which was, slightly anxious there. But once it was done, it was real fun, real nice. It was great to talk to the kids and whatnot. So you can turn to the next slide. Now this is the headstone of someone who was very important to our state history, but is basically all but forgotten now. Now, as you can see, his name is Albert G. Jones, and he was the last surviving Union and Civil War in general veteran in all of Idaho. Now, he had a pretty exciting life, which is why I specifically chose him to be a focal point of my senior paper. He was born in Kingston, Missouri, to a slaveholding family, and when he turned 16, he enlisted in the Union Army in 1864, and his family and uncle were very displeased with that. Specifically, his uncle wished for him to not return home alive from the war because he was bringing dishonor to their family. Now, the regiment he enlisted into was the 44th Volunteer Missouri Infantry, which is the uniform I'm representing with this. And basically, his unit marched down all throughout Tennessee and down to Mobile, Alabama. That's where his unit was mainly mobilized. Now, it was late in the war. Basically, his unit mustered out when the war ended. But his his unit was, a major part of it was wiped out in a engagement in Tennessee, which they had to recover from, and so they were then shuttled down towards Mobile, Alabama, and to get into the main port of that area, they had to capture a place called Spanish Fort. Now, it was besieged, and during night, his unit, along with him, were taken out on a night raid in which he was wounded. He, taken to the field hospital. He did survive, all that jazz and whatnot, and he managed to basically went AWOL from the hospital to reunite with his unit, and then the war ended in 1865, and he mustered out. He married basically a hometown sweetheart of his once in 1866, and then in the 1870s he moved to Montana for a bit, did a couple of stuff there. He actually led some of the first tour wagons into Yellowstone, if you can believe it. Very interesting life, and of course in 1925 he moved up here into Emmett to be closer to his brother-in-law, who was a doctor over in Oregon. And towards the end of his life, World War II had started. One of his last wishes was to see our troops return home safely and victoriously from the war. Now, unfortunately, he did not live to see that day because he died November 27th, 1943. But a thing to take from his life was, all throughout his life, he was dedicated to service, helping others, and also just goodwill towards men. That's a big thing to deal with, because what I'm trying to do later with my life is once I graduate, I'm planning to go to the Air Force Academy. So that's a big reason why I was drawn towards this kind of subject matter. And you can turn to the next slide. Now these people, none of this would have been possible if they hadn't helped me. Meg Davis, she's the head curator here at our local museum. If you ever have any questions whatsoever about the history of our town or anything, you can ask her. She is like a bottomless well of information and knowledge. She says this herself and to others. Yeah, she was my mentor and all that. Really nice lady. And Jenny Lewis, she was the person who I got into contact with to help schedule my life history event at the museum. She was my main contact. The James County Historical Society in general, because without their resources there, I wouldn't have been able to do any of my research, which is what a bulk of what my time spent was just spending hours upon hours there, flipping through binders and reading obituary notes and whatnot. And then CNC Sutlery, which, if you didn't know what it was, is a local-based business that produces Civil War reenactment supplies and uniforms. That's who actually made this uniform completely. Yeah, and that's basically the gist of my project. Do you have any questions for me?
Just kidding. That was awesome. I like history as well, so that was very cool. So what was your favorite part of this project? I mean, obviously you did a lot of research, so was that very intriguing, or was it just teaching the kids, or what was the favorite part?
It would be a tie between the research and the kids. My family obviously knows this, but my entire life I've been a bit of a bookworm. You lock me in. I do this to myself at the museum because I volunteer there every now and again. I just lock myself in a back room and just flip through pages and pages and pages of stuff and notes. It's just what I like to do, but also I do like to teach this kind of stuff because if we don't teach anyone this kind of stuff, it's going to be forgotten, and the lessons that it teach are very important for us as a society in a whole. Any others?
Do you have notes up there on that podium?
Yeah, my speech.
Oh, because I never saw you look at it, so I was going to ask you how many times you practiced this.
A total of 3 times. But I have all this stuff memorized basically inside my head because how else do you write a speech if you don't know what you're talking about? Any other questions?
So when you taught the junior hires, what were their responses, or the kids?
So They were middle schoolers, just
Junior high, middle, yeah.
yeah. But they were more, they weren't really interested in what I was wearing. They were primarily interested, because, you know, they're middle schoolers, in the gun rack that we have there of firearms and whatnot. That was the main thing they were really interested in. You know, they're kids, they're interested in the big, shiny guns. And I basically just walked them through this process of how it would, it's basically an 11-step process of reloading a musket from the 1860s.
And then one other question is, when you join the Air Force, what is it that you're looking to do within the Air Force?
So I am going to the Air Force Academy, which trains officers for both the Air Force and the Space Force, and I'm planning to become a logistics officer in the Space Force, actually.
Very cool.
Any other questions? Yeah, I got one. Oh, yeah, Grandpa?
What rank are you displaying?
Just a general private. Yeah. If I was anything other than, the only way you can distinguish ranks with any of the enlisted personnel is chevrons, which would begin with sergeant. That's the only way you can tell ranks with the lower enlisted, is that once you start seeing chevrons, is that they're, you know, is when they start turning to sergeants. And then you get fancier uniforms, double-breasted buttons for your officers and whatnot. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I don't know if this is a question, but more of a comment. I appreciate your understanding at your youthful age of the idea of if you don't keep sharing this information, it's going to get lost. So please don't lose your passion for the things that you really know and understand, which obviously is this. So thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to take just about a 15-minute intermission so you guys can stretch your legs, get something to drink, talk to your seniors, congratulate those who have gone up so far, encourage those who are still waiting. So we will reconvene at 6:45. it's 6:45. I'm going to slowly walk up to this podium here while everyone finds their seats again. I really liked that intermission music. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Okay, while we are getting settled in, I know our judges are chomping at the bit to go. They are very excited, especially Mr. Thompson. Yes, I know. Yep. Okay. Well, we have 3 more presenters tonight, so I hope you guys have lots of room left in your day, right? We're only at 6:45. Plenty of daylight left, so to speak. Pay no mind that it's very dark outside. Okay. Without any more waiting, please put your hands together for Mr. Anthony Bonacore.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Bonacore. I first learned how to cook around 5 years ago. And before that, I didn't even know how to make ramen, to be honest with you. Cooking has been a way for me and my father to grow closer. And I really started to enjoy it eventually and was able to express creativity and have fun with it. So for my senior project, I wanted to teach a kids' culinary class. So with that, I wanted to show the students that they can do the same, express creativity, have fun, and to show they can cook as well. For this project, it was definitely something new that I've never done before. And yeah, I knew how to cook at home, but how would be taking that to the next level and teaching kids how to do that. So during this time, I was offered the chance to teach a class at Quickwater Academy in Meridian. And with that, I was able to teach every Friday for around 2 months. So in order to teach it, I wanted to get to know the students. Next slide. So with when I got to know the students eventually and was able to teach, I wanted to give them safety rules and stuff to follow throughout the time. So I gave them a 15-question quiz, and that was questions, easy questions, but trying to test what they knew and if this was something new they've never done before. So some of the questions could have been like what shoes to wear inside the kitchen, or what temperature to cook a chicken to, which is 165 degrees Fahrenheit if you didn't know. So after that, in order to take the class, they had to pass that quiz and follow all the kitchen rules. So next slide. The next week we started was actual knife cuts, which was something interesting because it was difficult to try to show them and telling them at the same time. And so we started out with carrots, onions, and celery, which, if you didn't know, those 3 ingredients make up mirepoix, which is a type of cooking ingredients which you can put in soups, which can make stocks and all sorts of stuff. So cooking carrots, we cut small and medium dice, and same thing with celery. Onions, I taught them how to julienne an onion, which is on there, as well as dice as well. But if you've never cut onions before, it can make you cry. And the kids were very dramatic when it came to crying in the kitchen. So that was a challenge of trying to regroup them all and make sure they could stick to the task at hand, which was completing these cuts to move to the next week. So the next week we made salads, and not just a bag of salad you can make and pour dressing onto, which I don't blame you if you want to do that. It still tastes good. But we went ahead and made our own Caesar and ranch dressing, and this was a good week for the kids because they actually got to eat the food, and they really enjoyed that. The next week, we made, it was appetizers and sides, and we made garlic bread, fried pickles and pickles, or fried pickles and fries. But for the bread, we made a garlic herb butter as well, and then we baked it, and it came out nice and golden and crisp. And then for the fried pickles, we breaded that and then fried those. Those were good. And then the final thing was the fries. But instead of frying the fries, because not everybody has a fryer hanging around their house, we baked the potatoes in the oven. And then, so that was the appetizers inside week. The next week was one of my favorite weeks, because if you don't know me, I love fettuccine Alfredo. It's one of my favorite meals to make. So it was very fun for me to be able to show the students how to make that. And so this week was one of the most difficult weeks because the patience of the students to make the Alfredo was very, very light. And the Alfredo took, if you haven't made it at home, you need a lot of cream and a lot of cheese, and you just constantly are stirring it so it can not stick to or burn. So that was a challenge, trying to get everybody through that and making sure they all have fun while doing it. So, and then the last week of me actually teaching the students was just a dessert, and that was brownies. Just your easy brownies instead of not the box brownies, but we made our own recipe and stuff like that. And then next slide. So all that stuff came together. All the stuff I tried to teach them over the weeks came up to the last week, which was lasagna. I tried to make lasagna with them so that they were able to incorporate everything they learned over the last 6 weeks before that. And because for the bolognese, which is in the silver pan there, you need the knife cuts you used from week 1, which was carrots, onions, celery, the mirepoix. And then we made Alfredo for this lasagna. And then one of my favorite parts of this week was showing them how to layer the lasagna and then having them be able to bake it and have fun with that. And I think the picture shows that it came out pretty well. So what I've learned during this project was being able to show the students how to cook and kind of experience what a kitchen is like and stuff like that. And I really learned during this time that I might have to be a little more try to teach certain kids more skills than the other ones because they have different learning levels. That was a big thing for me to learn. So I found a passion in cooking, and I wanted to try to be a light and show the students all the things I know and try to help them know the same. During this time, I learned how to be a leader, and I also learned how some of the challenges of being a teacher. But even though there were challenges, being able to see the students' faces light up when they got to eat the food they made and get to enjoy it was all worth it. So, next slide. So I want to thank all y'all for listening, and yeah, any questions, judges?
How many kids were you teaching at one time?
At one time, so for a couple weeks it was about 8 at a time, and then for the last couple weeks we combined and had about 16 at once.
So it says here ages 6 to 13. Were you teaching them all at the same time?
The last couple weeks, yes.
What were the challenges with that, with such a wide range of ages?
Yes, good question. So that was definitely difficult to keep them all on track and not some zoned out on different things or trying to, hands on each other and stuff. So that was some of the challenges. And then just trying to keep their attention that whole time was a little bit of a challenge, but.
Do you see yourself going into culinary arts school?
I can definitely see myself going into school or some sort of teaching of some type.
Have you expanded into more difficult recipes, or you stick just to most of the basics?
I've gone to, I think one of the most difficult things I made was like cioppino.
Okay.
Something, but yeah, I try to stick to certain things, improve on that, and then keep going.
What is that?
Cioppino, it's a type of seafood stew, Italian seafood stew.
Okay. All right.
It's pretty good.
Oh, I asked your question. Okay.
Okay, so first of all, you do know that my office is right over there, and so if you want to bring some of that famous fettuccine
Yeah.
Alfredo, that would be awesome. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there in case you weren't aware. And then also, so if you go to school, obviously you're Italian. Is that what you would like to focus on, or do you have aspirations of learning like just total different kinds of styles of cooking, or what is it that you enjoy doing the most so far?
I definitely enjoy Italian food, but I'm really wanting to explore all aspects of food to learn and grow in all types of cooking skills. Good. Thank you.
Okay, we are down to the final two, and we have saved a really good one for you guys. So, I will say, I have learned a lot from this presenter. I owned a horse for many years, and I realized that I knew nothing until this lovely seniors presentation tonight. So, please welcome up Miss Linnea Stidham.
Hello, my name is Linnea Stidham, and for my senior project over this last summer, I hosted and planned an equine bodywork clinic. Next slide, please. Now, to execute this clinic, I studied the Masterson method of equine massage therapy, which is a pretty unique method to me personally, as instead of forcing joints to move around or flattening out muscles, you pinpoint areas of tension throughout a horse's body and relieve that tension through gentle, soft touches on specific pressure points. Once I had studied that more, I moved on to my evaluations, where I evaluated roughly 9 horses multiple times of different age, sex, and health conditions, and also breed. This gave me a wide range of understanding what horses react to and how they react, and how to help horses in different conditions. And then was my clinic execution, where I had about 12 members show up to my clinic. Next slide, please. Now, to prepare for this clinic and make sure that I was evaluating horses correctly and presenting the correct information to people, I spent every waking moment that I had by myself, at work, on break, on a car ride, or any time just studying this method. I would go onto YouTube and search Jimmy Masterson, who is the creator of the Masterson method, and he has a channel where he just posts different techniques in very in-depth, which I'm a visual learner, which that helped me a lot. Next, I also studied his book, which my mentor, Debbie, she gifted me for the summer, and then gifted me my own at the end of my clinic, which was amazing. I still read it to this day. And that went over like pictures and step-by-step processes on how to relieve tension in a horse. I also went onto university websites and looked at horse anatomy to further my understanding of what connects to what, so that I understood if a horse I was evaluating had issues in its leg, then I knew, oh, that would connect to the C7T1 junction, so I'd work on that junction. And if that junction wasn't helping, I'd move on to another junction that helped. So as I was doing this, I was taking lots of notes that I could reflect on while I was evaluating horses, so that I just have that quick memory of it. And once I furthered my understanding of all of the method, I moved on to making my invites for my clinic, which I created and sent out to a group of horsewomen that I figured would want to attend my clinic. Next slide, please. Next, I headed out to Baker City, Oregon, where I ran my evaluations and hosted my clinic. For my evaluations, I did a 3-step process based off of the bladder meridian line of a horse. The bladder meridian line is a nerve line that runs between the 2 ears of the horse, all the way down its back, below its back hoof. This line is a nerve line that connects to all the different nerve endings of the horse. So when you guide your hand along that in your number 1 process, step, search, you find where the horse is tense. As you're searching, you're looking for a reaction. Reaction in a horse might be blinking, dilating in the pupil, flicking its ear, flicking its tail, shifting its weight, things like that. Very subtle reactions, but still reactions. Once you find a reaction, you're in your 2nd step, which is stay. You stay at that point until they release, which is your 3rd step. A release might look like yawning, licking, chewing, taking a deep breath in, taking a deep breath out, again switching weight, stretching, and even shaking. This is a little hard to understand, especially when you haven't seen a horse smile or yawn or lick or chew. So I tried to take as many videos as I could when I was evaluating horses, which I have a slide for you guys to watch. And next slide, please. It's a little video, so you might have to push play. Not working? That's okay. Basically, I show 3 horses in this video and all their different actions, which is really cool to watch because some horses release very extremely and will do a huge stretch and big yawn, while others will just kind of like blow their nose at you and flick their tail. And I don't know. It's really cool seeing the different reactions there. So, next slide, please. As I came closer and closer to the clinic due date, I realized, man, this is really coming up soon. So I grabbed all my necessities for the clinic. For those of you who know me, I'm a very quiet and soft speaker, so I knew that I was going to need a microphone and a little speaker that I could attach to my hip while I was presenting. So I got that off of Amazon, and then I ran to the store and got some fruits for a hands-on activity for my clinic. These fruits represented the different types of pressure that you should use at different points of the horse's body. So for example, in some techniques, you use a lemon pressure. So you put all your force you can onto a lemon to squish it, basically. So that's what you use for that one. Whereas some, you would use egg yolk pressure, where it was enough to break egg yolk. So that kind of contrasted the different areas there. I also wanted to make sure that I had fans and neck coolers for my day because it was going to be around 100 degrees that day, and I wanted to make sure all my clinic attendees were nice and cool. So I got those as well. I also gathered some chairs so that everybody could sit down while I was doing my introduction. And after I did all this, I got my final RSVPs to the clinic, which ended up working out perfectly fine because some people had to reschedule, which was totally good, and then it got made up for because other people said that they could come. Next slide, please. So then came the morning of the clinic, where I groomed the arena that I was going to be using. I watered it. I took care of the herd. I also groomed my demo horse that I was going to be using. I reviewed any techniques I was going to be using in the clinic. I also set up all the chairs that everybody was going to be sitting on. And I set up the little cooling station to make sure everybody kept cool. I really wanted to make sure that this was done correctly because one main part of the Masterson method is to connect the mind to the body of the horse. When the mind is distracted by the dust in the field or the dust in the arena and how his buddies are out in the field grazing, they won't have that mind-to-body connection. So I wanted to be very distraction-free, and same with the people evaluating. They have to be paying attention to how the horse is reacting to what they're doing, and so on. It was a very peaceful morning for me. I was able to just spend some time. I got up early and take care of the herd and make sure everybody's needs were met, which I took videos of this too, which is the next slide. We'll see if that video works too.
That one won't work yet, but I can show your other video, I think.
Okay, that one will be in a little bit. those were my evaluations. Ta-da! and, and then my clinic morning, if that video will play, that would be great. No worries if you can't get the other video going. So. All right. So for my clinic, everybody came at 9 o'clock, which was perfect because everybody was on time, so there's no rush to get started. This lasted until 11 o'clock, which was a perfect time frame for me personally, as I knew that my clinics or my attendees weren't getting too much information of me just blabbering on, but also wasn't too little. Now, with 12 people in one arena means that there would be 12 horses in one arena, which, as I was saying before, I want limited distractions. So instead of having 12 horses in one arena, I paired people into twos per one horse. This worked out well because per technique and per junction, I had 2 techniques, so each person could do their own technique on the horse. My clinic had a structure, a 3-part structure, which was first the introduction, where I did just an intro to equine body work and explained what it is, when to use it. And then I also went over the different pressures of where you apply the lemon pressure to a certain spot and the egg yolk pressure to another spot. Then happened the demonstrations where I demonstrated different stretches and releases and things like that, and had my attendees repeat the same. After that, hands-on learning, I did Q&A, where everybody was all done with their evaluations and just asked me questions for whatever they had, which I was really happy for because I had studied a lot, and so it was like my studying was actually paying off. My mentor is also a photographer, and she took a lot of photos and videos for me at my clinic, which I would show you a video, but I don't know if that's gonna work. Ah! This is clinic morning, but watch it. That was my clinic morning, and if my other video would play too. That way you guys can see what the clinic looked like. No worries if that video doesn't end up playing. We can skip to the next slide. I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out and watching and listening to what we've all been so passionate about this last year. I want to say a special thank you to Debbie Wanch, who is my mentor. She just poured a lot of wisdom into me this last summer, which was super helpful. And then also to Susan and Terry Thayer, who opened up their ranch and arena to me so that I could present my clinic to them. And also to all my clinic attendees for making this possible. And to Laura Sheldon, my senior project advisor, for meeting up with me in the summer, which no teacher wants to do. So thank you all.
So one thing I'd like to say is I just like to commend you. Obviously, this is something that's, taking on all this in one summer is probably a lot. But had you done this before this summer project? Oh, here we go.
To answer your question, I have looked into equine bodywork and have always been really intrigued by it, but never went in this in depth. And so that was a huge learning curve for me. But no, I haven't really gotten that much into it.
Is this something you want to do as a career?
Yeah, definitely. I am looking to getting certified in either equine massage therapy or equine bodywork, and then looking into equine nutrition as well.
So how much schooling does that require?
Just for the certification, it's kind of something you do on your own time. Jimmy Masterson actually has his own certification course that you can take that is over like 6 to 8 months.
After experiencing doing this class, are you going to keep up doing it every year?
I would like to do something similar to it every year. I didn't think I would like hosting a clinic this much because I do again, I am a soft speaker, so it is hard for me to talk to a group of people. But that was honestly the highlight of my last 5 years. It was really, really fun. So I'll definitely look more into hosting clinics like that again, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Hello once again. I see so many of you standing and happily chatting away, so I will just take a little bit of time here to get going. We have one more presenter, okay? Our last one of the evening, and I want you to prepare yourselves to be wowed, so please buckle in, okay? Thank you so much. Now, don't let me down, okay? Because we're going to welcome them up, and we're going to clap really loud, okay? We're not going to practice because we want to surprise him. Thank you. Okay, please welcome up Mr. Titus Campos.
Thank you. Little does she know I heard everything. Okay, when I was in 7th grade, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play the acoustic guitar. I thought that people who played the guitar were cool, and I, being a 7th grade boy, also wanted to be cool. But I didn't realize that the guitar would eventually become a passion of mine. Now, I'd say I had a pretty average guitar learning experience. I learned a few chords, I learned how to play some songs, and I really enjoyed it. But me being a 7th grade boy, I always wanted to be cooler. And I realized that possibly the coolest instrument in the world, at least in my mind, was the electric guitar. And so one summer, I spent the whole summer working, saving money, so I could buy my very own electric guitar. And once I got that, I was thrilled, and I learned even more things, more techniques, how to play, and I really enjoyed it. And I eventually realized that typically guitar players have more than one guitar, specifically electric guitars, because they can make different sounds and it's fun to be able to play different things. I, being at that point in high school, could not afford another guitar, and so instead I decided that since my senior project was coming up, I would just build my own electric guitar. Now, not surprisingly, one does not simply build an electric guitar out of nowhere. I had some pretty big questions that I had to consider. Biggest of which being is, how would I build something so complex with no experience in woodworking or without somebody to teach me? I also had to figure out how I would be able to afford all of the parts, since building a guitar is still pretty expensive, even if it's not buying it. And finally, I had to ask myself, how was I going to learn how to wire all the electronics and get it to actually work? Next slide, please. I want to step away from those questions for now, fast forward to the future when my guitar is already finished. I'm not going to give anything away yet, but I wanted to share a realization that I have. I realized that my building process really closely resembled the design process. And what the design process is an 8-step process that designers or engineers use when they're creating something new. I realized that I could sort of mimic the design process in my slideshow, and I put the steps up there for you to read, but I'm not going to go over each one verbally because I just want to save time. But the goal is that this presentation will follow those same steps pretty loosely. Okay, the first step, identifying a problem, was easy. I wanted to build an electric guitar, but I didn't know how to. The second step, which is research to find constraints. Oh, you can go to the next slide. And the next one. Thank you. It was also pretty easy. It was just those 3 questions from earlier. I needed a wood shop, a mentor to teach me, a budget, a source for materials, and a way to solder the electronics. And I know those might seem less like constraints and more like issues that I would resolve over time, but I wanted this presentation to just kind of loosely follow it, and it's not going to be perfect, but I just noticed there are very many similarities. Anyways, I had to find some solutions to these problems. This is sort of like the third step, except instead of finding multiple solutions to the same problem, I had to find multiple solutions to multiple problems. Fortunately for me, I was able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by finding my awesome mentor named Sid Carr. And he was able to introduce me to a website called StuMac. And StuMac is basically like the Amazon for guitar making. if you can think of a guitar part or tool, StewMac probably has it, and it's going to be pretty high quality. Now, to keep this from sounding like a sponsorship, I'll say something negative about StewMac, which is the price. It is a great place to look for things that need to be high quality, but when I want to save money on less important things, I went with either Amazon or eBay. By doing this, if I had bought everything on StewMac, the project would have cost me nearly $500, but I was able to save money, and I only spent about $200 on materials. Okay, so aside from the price, my mentor Sid was super generous, and he provided all of the wood that we need to build a guitar. He also nearly had all the tools that we need, and if we didn't have a tool, he went out and bought it, claiming that he would be able to use it for other projects. And to add even more to his generosity, he also supplied all the Dr. Pepper that we would need to complete it. The last issue was the electronics, which I knew I didn't need to be done until the end, and so I didn't really stress about them, and I just kind of got the project underway and figured I could figure it out later. Let's move on to the fourth step, which is to choose the most promising solution. I know it sounded like I just found a bunch of solutions, but I kind of like to think of this step as the design that I wanted to choose for my guitar. It's inspired by a BC Rich Mockingbird, which, as you saw on the slide before, is a pretty aggressive design, and it can generate a lot of polarizing opinions. But I had to plan to take away some of the aggressiveness and kind of modify this design in a way to make it a bit more appealing to most people. And you'll see that shape. I'm not going to give away the final shape yet, but you'll see it develop as the slides go on. All right, finally time to get to the building process. And yes, this is the fifth step in my slightly modified design process. So when my mentor brought me to his shop to pick out some wood, I'll admit I was pretty overwhelmed. They had a bunch of different types of wood to choose from and a lot of different grain patterns. He recommended black walnut, however, which is a super pretty dark colored wood, and it's super popular among woodworkers. And I ended up choosing a piece of that with a really neat grain pattern. Now I actually have a different piece here that Sid let me borrow for this presentation. And now, as you can see, this wood is incredibly beautiful. That was a joke. This is pretty ugly, but in order to turn that into a nice looking guitar, I had to process it. That involved taking a tool called a router, which you can see in that first picture right there. It has a really large bit underneath it that spins really fast, and it's set on those silver tracks, so you can move it back and forth over the slab, which will eventually give you a perfectly flat slab to work with. So I did that, and that piece that I was first working on, you can see it on the end right here. That is going to be the front of the guitar body. And the picture, smaller picture right to the left of it, I used that, and the top right up here, that was going to become the neck, and that machine right there is called a planer, which is a much quicker process than using the router, because the planer is basically just that box that has a spinning blade in it, and it runs the length of the slab, and anything that fits in it, basically all you have to do is put the wood in one side, and it comes out the other side flatter. And you can think of it a little bit like how you insert cash into a self-checkout stand, and it rudely yanks the dollar bills out of your hand, except that the planer gives you the wood back, whereas the self-checkout does not give you your money back. At this point, I had the basic piece cut to the right size to be used for the neck. The woodworking term for a piece that has been processed to that point is called a blank. Now once the neck blank was finished, I still had to process a few more pieces of wood using the planer. First, I needed to choose a wood for the fretboard, which is the thin piece of wood that lays over the top of the neck. I chose to use maple wood for the fretboard because I thought it would be a nice contrast to the walnut because of how light the color is. And I used 2 more small pieces of black walnut that would become the back of the body, and I used 3 thin boards of maple that would be sandwiched in between the front and back pieces, which would create a stripe along the sides of the guitar that I thought would be pretty cool. You'll notice all the sawdust that was on the floor and on me in the next slide. There it is. And it'll surprise you how quickly it'll build up. Now, once a piece of wood is processed, it usually needs some cracks to be filled. A common way to do that is with epoxy, which you can see is that resin that's in the top right corner. All you have to do is, or what I did in this case, is look over every single crack in the slab and pour the epoxy into it and just wait for it to harden. And I realized something pretty interesting about epoxy is that as it hardens, it starts to heat up a lot, which I learned from chemistry last year is known as an exothermic reaction because it releases heat. I hope you're proud of me, Mrs. Moiser. All right, once the epoxy was dried, I had to grind off the excess. I used an angle grinder, which is a handheld tool with a spinning disc on the end, and the disc has overlaying layers of really rough sandpaper on it, and the sandpaper is arranged a little bit like a fan, but like a whole bunch of blades all around the circle. It was really good for grinding away all the excess epoxy. You'll notice that grinding away the epoxy left a lot of white dust. That's the picture in the top left right there. That dust is pretty dangerous to breathe in, a lot more than sawdust because it's plastic, and so I had to wear a mask for that step. Eventually, though, I had a nice flat, usable slab with no cracks left in it. Now, once I had all the wood pieces for the body ready, I was able to glue them together. I had to use a lot of clamps to keep even pressure so that there were no gaps left in between the different layers. And you can see that picture. It looks pretty comical, but all of that is necessary to get a nice solid glue up. And so once that glue up was finished, I moved on to designing the head of the guitar, which is on the end of the neck and holds the strings tight. Next slide, please. So you can see the decision that I went with for the head shape. And when I was looking at the body shape that I decided, I noticed it had kind of this windswept look, like the wind was blowing it in a certain direction. And so I decided to keep the same shape for the head, and I think it turned out pretty good. I used a jigsaw to cut the shape out, which is a tool that has a straight saw coming out of it, and it moves in a rapid up and down motion. And it's really good for cutting out rough shapes of wood. And it's the same tool that I use to cut the rough shape for the body out of the big glued up chunk that I had described earlier. Once the head was cut out, I had to glue it to the end of the neck blank. Again, I used multiple clamps for this, and I think this was an even more important glue up than the body, because if the head wasn't attached to the neck strongly enough, it couldn't handle the tension of the strings, and you can just imagine how badly that would end. After the head was attached to the neck, I had to cut a slot down the length of the neck. The tool that I use for that is a router, but like the one from earlier, but this time it's a lot smaller. It also had a different bit underneath that was good for carving out straight slots like the one that I needed to make. And that slot is for something called a truss rod, which is a long metal rod that runs the length of the neck, and it helps keep the neck rigid over time and not bend due to the string tension. Thankfully, though, that piece is eventually covered up by the fretboard, which you can see in this bottom picture once I got it on. However, before I could actually put the fretboard onto the neck, I had to turn it from a big ugly blank into an actual smooth rounded neck. I started by using the big router from before with a new really big bit that was meant for cutting roundovers into wood. I ran the router along each side of the neck to get the rough shape, and after that I used the angle grinder again to grind it into a more refined shape, and I finally used a hand tool called a rasp to carve the fine details into the ends of the neck. A rasp is basically just a really coarse file. So once the neck was shaped, I attached the fretboard, and of course I had to sand the neck very smooth at the end. There is an unbelievable amount of sanding in woodworking. At this point, I'm about halfway finished with the guitar. I had both the neck and body cut to shape, so I actually got to see what they would look like together in the end, which is that picture in the bottom right. And so that was pretty interesting just to be able to see my progress. And it's also nice it was nice to get past the big sections of just kind of cutting out wood and all the big stuff and start to get some more intricate details about things. All right, time to introduce a material other than wood. I had to inlay 24 metal frets across the fretboard, which are precisely spaced to create accurate notes. As you can expect, this process took a while and it was pretty tedious, and so I won't bore you with it. I'll move on to the body, which I used a small router and a special template on to cut out all of the cavities where the electronics would go. I made a special plate to cover the electronics well on the back, and the front cavities will be filled with the pickups, which are the pieces that go underneath the strings and they pick up the sounds. For the last few modifications to the body, I had to drill some holes for the bridge, which is the piece that holds the strings at the body. The holes were too precise to be drilled by hand, so thankfully my mentor had a friend who owned a drill press. And what a drill press is basically a attachment on a big frame that just you pull a handle down and it drills a perfectly straight hole into the piece of wood that you need. So once that was done, I only had 2 steps left. First, I had to finish the guitar wood. And I used a satin finish for this because I liked the subtle reflection. And you can skip to the next slide for this. You can see me finishing it right there. That finish wood, that's when you really get to see just how the wood grain looks. And second, I could finally put the whole guitar together. And this was a pretty quick and exciting process because I could finally see the whole guitar and what I had created. And I might be wondering, what about the electronics? Wasn't that kind of a big problem? I was really fortunate to have my uncle help me with the electronics because he knows a lot more about electrical stuff than I do. He helped me with all the wiring, and then the guitar was finally done. Now, there are a lot of improvements that could be made, which is kind of convenient since step 7 of the design process is to think of improvements. Next slide, please. Oh, maybe not yet. I made a list of improvements on this slide. There it is. And if I ever made another guitar, then I would definitely refer back to this list. Now, finally, according to step 8 of the design process, I'd like to share with you the guitar I've created, as well as a few of my senior pictures that I took with it. I also played it for church worship one week. I'll grab it real quick here. So this is the finished guitar, and I'm kind of tangled up here, but you can see kind of compared to this piece of wood right here, ending with this one, just how dramatic of a change those steps make, especially the finishing process, which to a lot of woodworkers is actually generally the favorite step in building something because it really just brings the whole creation to life. And so, on top of just showing it to you, I think it'd be kind of lame if I didn't actually play it so that you could all see. And so I'd like to play a short song for you. Hello? Okay, it is on. All right. I'd like to say that this project is something that I would absolutely love to do again. I love the challenge combined with the reward of the end result, and I learned a ton about woodworking safety, techniques, and creativity. I think that this is something that I'd like to do a lot more of as an adult. And as for all of the written components and this presentation, I've realized just how much you can learn just by documenting a process and thinking more deeply about it. This senior project has definitely been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Now, I'd like to give a huge thank you to my mentor, Sid Carr, for how much time and dedication you put into helping me with this project. And I'd also like to thank everybody else who helped with this project, even in small ways. And finally, all of you as well for listening to this presentation. Any questions, judges?
When are you building the next one?
That's a good question. Right now I'm trying to save for college. So I would like to build another one in the near future, but I kind of see this as more of a kind of a hobby that I could do once I start to get settled and can afford to have my own tools and shop, and that I can, yeah.
If you would have had to pay for everything, would it have been cheaper than buying one?
Oh, it kind of depends, because if you go on Amazon, you will find a whole bunch of cheap $200 guitars that come with amplifiers. Those really aren't that great. But then again, some guitars can get up to $3,000 or something. And also, like I mentioned, the different materials, depending on where you go, you can get them for cheaper or more expensive. And so I think it just kind of depends on your budget overall. I think generally, if you keep the same materials, you will pay less if you build your own guitar. But it just kind of depends on what you're willing to pay for either one.
Does the different type of wood that you would use, do they affect the sound of the guitar?
That's a really good question. Yes, typically they're referred to as tone woods in the guitar world. Different guitars will have different woods just because you can get different like mellower or sharper sounds. When I chose black walnut, I realized that with electric guitars, it doesn't really matter as much because it's electrified compared to acoustic guitars where it does matter a lot more. But when I chose black walnut, it was mainly just for the look of it. And then compared to, if I was to build an acoustic guitar, then I would probably choose a different kind of wood that would be better sounding. Oh. Okay then. All right, thank you.
He's so sweet. He held on to the microphone for me. Here, I thought he hit it. Okay, guys, as we conclude our evening, I want to thank you all again for coming to help support our seniors. They have obviously put in so much hard work into these projects, and I, for one, am thoroughly impressed and am hoping for lots of, I just want them to remember me when they're like famous and, you know, all the things, so they can shower their success onto me with love, especially with like, I don't know, coffee and tacos. I love those things. Anyway, so on your way out, just remember to share that love and appreciation with our seniors. Do you have to know them to tell them good job? No, absolutely not. In fact, I implore all of you, please go to a senior you do not know and tell them what an amazing job they did. It will make an impact. Now, before I close out, I thought there was something, but apparently not. It is late, and I am getting tired. So I'm sure you guys are too. Thank you so much. Drive home safe. Have a lovely weekend, and we will see you next time.